Remember when this happened? I know that we just had champions and the EG storyline and the tournament itself was such an incredible moment. But this right here, this moment of the Guard winning Ascension and getting into the Tier 1 league is what Valorant Esports is all about because it is what drives everybody who is not currently a Tier 1 pro to continue playing the game. It is the most important part of the entire ecosystem, in my opinion. So like many of you, I was absolutely shocked to see this update from Riot saying that the Guard would not be allowed into the VCT Americas. And this was subsequently followed up with the fact that the Guard was now going to just cease existing, which we kind of thought was possibly going to happen. But the fact that Riot was going to basically void a slot in the partnered league, they were going to get rid of the Ascended team slot that had been earned by the Guard and their players and their coach and their staff, and just stick with a 10-team league for next year was just utterly shocking and one of the worst possible outcomes that could ever happen in this game. We just came off of the high of what is probably the best Valorant tournament that has ever happened in terms of the spectacle, in terms of the production, in terms of the storylines. Champions 2023 was probably the best moment in Valorant history. And then 2 days later, we're hit with this bombshell that one of the most exciting storylines heading into next year, which could make next year's champs even more incredible, is now gone. And there was a subsequent post by Leo Faria, the head of Valorant Esports, talking about the decision making that they went through to come to the conclusion that the Guard and the Guard slot should just cease to exist. And quite frankly, while I can sympathize with a lot of the points that he brings up, there is a huge amount of corruption in esports, and teams selling their slots is something that we definitely don't want in Valorant. The fact of the matter is that these 5 players and their coach earned a slot, and that is the promise that has been given to esports players. That has been the promise that has been given to Valorant players from the very beginning. You are allowed to make it to the top of the league if you are good enough, if you try hard enough, if you put in enough effort. You can get there, and then you can have the opportunities that are won through your hard effort. So the fact that they were basically saying that, nope, that's not correct. It doesn't matter how hard you try. It doesn't matter how much you worked. It doesn't matter how much you sacrificed. It is not guaranteed. After guaranteeing it for a couple of years now is just absolutely and totally wrong. Now, the 3 options that were presented by Riot and by Leo were that, number 1, they could just bump up the second place team, which is M80. And in my opinion, that is not the correct approach because it just still doesn't solve the problem of the players who worked super hard to earn their slot, make it into the league. So I don't think that M80 should be promoted. The second thing that they were talking about is that they could just have the players be acquired by another org. And this definitely has some problems because you never know whether the Guard and some other org pass some money behind the scenes and they're like, oh, we'll just pretend that we're pulling out of esports, but we just don't want to be here and you guys can pick up the team. That's definitely something that could happen. It probably is something that has happened in esports in the past. So it's not something that they should set a precedent of being allowed to happen or even possible to happen. But I think that this is something that in year 1, where we have just had this massive, massive success of Valorant. The games were incredible. Valorant Esports is at a massive high and has so much momentum. And to instantly kill that momentum by basically cutting off the legs of the entire feeding system into the ecosystem is just not something that the sport of Valorant can really afford to do. And that's why I think it's really important for Riot and for Leo Faria to reconsider their approach to this, spend some more time coming up with solutions. And I wanted to kind of present a couple of options because this is not a problem that is unique to Valorant esports. This is something that traditional sports, which Riot clearly wants to compete with traditional sports with Valorant and with their esports, have dealt with and have dealt with successfully. For example, back in 2010 or 2011, the NBA as a collective organization bought one of their teams, the New Orleans Hornets, which was going through massive financial problems. They were losing tons of money. The owner didn't want to be part of the NBA anymore because he was not making money and he wanted to get rid of the team, but nobody would buy them. This sounds pretty familiar to me. And you know what the NBA did? They created a collective agreement to buy the team and then sell it to a new owner. But the NBA was in charge of the team for a period of time so that this guy could get the fuck out of the NBA and so that the team and the players and everybody who is employed on that organization didn't just suddenly vanish into thin air. This is not the only sport that's done that. The Montreal Expos, which were a baseball team in the major leagues, were hemorrhaging money. Their owner wanted to get rid of the team because the attendance was down, the management was bad, the team was doing poorly. He didn't want to own the team anymore, and he wanted to actually get money to go buy a different team. And you know what the MLB did? They bought the team, and then they eventually sold it to another ownership group. This has happened in hockey as well. The NHL has multiple times bought out bankrupt teams, owned the team for a period of time, managed it, and sold it to another ownership group. And this is obviously a little bit different because it's not like Riot would have to buy the guard, right? The guard is gone. The guard is out. There's just a bunch of players that used to play for a team that are now free agents. And they have technically earned the right through their play through Ascension to at least league minimum salary. Now, I don't know the legality behind all this, but I think there might even be some argument that these players have been promised league minimum salary already by Riot by simply winning Ascension, right? Because once you've ascended, you get the stipend from Riot Games. And that stipend, I believe, is calculated to sort of support a league minimum salary for an entire team and a coach. Now, I don't know exactly if those numbers are correct, but I think that's pretty much what it is. And so if that's the case, it's almost like Riot is reneging on that contract. And again, I don't know the legality of this. I don't know whether that's actually the case, but to me, that's kind of the perception that I see. And so I'm looking at three massive sports industries that have dealt with a very similar problem and all dealt with it in a very similar way, which is that the overarching company that is in charge of the entire league and has all of the power takes control of the team until a suitable buyer or a suitable outlet can be found so that all of the players and everybody involved do not get shafted and lose their jobs. And also so that the competitive integrity is maintained by not just like randomly removing a team from the league. And so I think that there's just some precedent to be set by these other big sports leagues, and Riot could really kind of continue the momentum and the goodwill that they've earned from the community through champions and through the handling of the esport in the last year by just doing the right thing. You know, they're in control. They can kind of do whatever they want. They own the league. They own the IP. They technically kind of own the teams and their slots in the league. So they can basically do whatever they want. So let's not put limits on what we can do. Remember, your motto is defy the limits. Let's defy the limits a little bit, and let's find a solution that allows the guard players to continue their career in Tier 1 and doesn't sort of handicap the next generation of players up into Tier 1 from the Tier 2 system as well. Please, let's figure this out.